Hi, everyone. Thank you, DG. That was very beautifully said. This is a period in which we are increasingly isolated from one another, and yet at the same time, we are also deeply united with one another. This is an experience that every human being on the planet is now going through. It is a universalizing experience. And it's also one that puts us in touch with our fragility, with our need to work together and be collaborative with one another. And it raises issues because inside the brain, we have two fundamental ways of dealing with disease. And these are both hardwired into the brain. The first is the path of fear, the path of disgust about disease, revulsion, turning away from others, a desire to protect oneself. And the second is a recognition that the virus spreads socially, but so also does the cure. So also does the support. So while we are, on the one hand, distancing ourselves from one another, and as Prabha mentioned, there are these narratives that we are now hearing that are designed to kind of put us on our alert on the one hand, but also potentially can turn in the direction of blaming others, as DG mentioned. I think we all are aware of the fact that we are going through a political process simultaneously in the United States, an election. One of the difficulties is that the crises are beginning to intersect with each other. And it is certainly important for those of us who are peace builders and conflict resolvers to connect with each other and to learn from each other about the best ways of approaching this problem. Our basic approach in Mediators Beyond Borders has been to see that conflict does not respect boundaries, national boundaries, and neither does disease, and neither do any of the climate issues or species extinction issues that we are facing. I think all of you may have received from Prabha a link to an article that I wrote, a chapter in a book that I wrote, which is about pandemics. And basically, I'm not going to go through it because you can obviously read that, but I just wanted to make a couple of short points. The first is that every national government is going to only reluctantly admit that it has a problem with regard to disease. They're going to try to minimize it and to hide it wherever they can because it impacts tourism, it impacts finances, and no government wants to be embarrassed by its inability to handle a problem. But what we see now is the fallacy of blaming individual countries, labeling this a Chinese virus as a specific example. So what we need to do is, I think, bring our skills and our talents and our attitudes and our basic approach to problem solving to this set of problems. And I think we can do this in a number of different ways, and we're going to be talking about that, and I'm assuming that that's going to be a large part of the conversation. What I'd like to suggest moving into that conversation is that we think about this issue on three levels. First of all, in terms of the here and now, the immediate issues that everybody is facing. Is there support? Are people going to be evicted? Are they going to lose their jobs? Is there enough food for them? Medication, things of this sort. And those are difficult issues and issues over which there are conflicts taking place. A second frame would be a near to present frame, which is what's going to happen in the next week or 2 weeks or month? And I think the short answer of that is that it's going to get worse. But in addition to that, there are going to be conflicts in families because schools have been closed and somebody's got to take care of the kids. There are going to be financial conflicts because now couples are going to be scrambling in order to make things work. There are going to be community conflicts, social conflicts of a variety of different kinds. And I think we can add to those political conflicts, certainly in the United States between Democrats and Republicans, but internationally between nationalists and multinationalists, if you will, or globalists, between people who want to look out for number one, America first, or whatever the phrase might happen to be, as opposed to we're all in this together. And my personal approach to this is to simply say, it doesn't matter whose end of the boat is sinking. We are all in the boat and we need to pull together in order to overcome this. And finally, the last frame of reference is a long-term frame because we need to have a much stronger World Health Organization in international response to potential pandemics so that each nation isn't left on its own to struggle and every other nation just says, oh boy, thanks that it wasn't us. And instead, there is sharing of information and resources from the very beginning. How do we create that kind of world? And I think we have to start where we live, that is, in peace building, in conflict resolution, in mediation. There's a final piece of this, which is we can see this as a kind of benefit, a kind of silver lining. And as Prabha said, we would not have wished this, but we have realized that we're all in this together. And we also have an opportunity through events like this to connect with one another across national boundaries. And I personally also want to thank Prabha for coming up with this idea and Prabha and DG for really making it happen. So what I'm hoping is that the conversations that we have are not limited to here's what I'm doing right now to face the problem that I'm addressing, but how do we as a community of peace builders and mediators, conflict resolvers, how can we be useful and effective in turning our skills in the direction of collaboration, problem solving, all of the consensus building, all of the little things, the little skills that all of us know. Just the skills of listening by themselves are important. Trauma approaches, trauma-informed mediation, all of these things are helpful. So the last piece is just to say thank you to all of you for being willing to join in this call. And we're hoping that you will take this and organize similar calls in your communities and keep the conversation going. Back to you, Prabha.